Is this on? Let's get this on also. Okay, so thank you all again. Very big chizuk to see everybody here and learning the Kol Torah and Beis Medrash, Gevaldik, and again want to dedicate the share for Shlema for parents Ben Chaya Dvor Aleya, and thank Rabbi Kleinman for carving out of his extremely busy schedule time to mechazik our tzibur and learn with us and give divrei chizuk, and it's very much appreciated that you're able to do that. So thank you very much, and at this time you will actually be able to hear the shir that you've been expecting and eagerly awaiting to hear. So thank you very much, Rabbi Kleinman.
How long am I supposed to go? Just want to begin by thanking the Kallah for inviting me. The truth is that it's one of those strange things. You know, you go to an airport and I'm on a plane and I ask somebody, "Where do you live?" I'm going to Florida. "Where do you live?" So they say they live in New York. "Why are you going to Florida?" "I'm going to see Florida." Right? And you come to Florida and you say Shalom Aleichem to somebody and he says, "Oh, I'm headed out. I'm going to New York to see New York." The type of people is that everybody wants to see the other place. You have here Talmidei Chachamim. You don't need to summon somebody from Brooklyn, New York to come give a shiur. I think the pshat is because in Florida they're not used to brawls and fighting and hitting back. It's for New Yorkers to talk about. So maybe that's why they wanted someone who's experienced. But in any event, I'm not sure which, I'll tell you the truth, I'm not sure which noisei to focus on. Yesterday the Elam learned about the Shroshim, the Yesaidos of Ovid Inish Dina L'Nafshei. Today we had a sugya of what I refer to as an extension of Ovid Inish Dina L'Nafshei, the sugya of Chavalos and fighting back. So I guess what I'll do is Rabbi Blezer told me yesterday he didn't focus on halacha l'maisa. I guess what I'll do is I'll throw out 2 or 3 noisim, 2 or 3 nidainim, cases that actually came up ladina, l'maisa, and I hope through there to touch on different pratim. And I'm going to throw out the 3 shilas in the beginning, and I don't know if we'll get to all of them. But this way, at least you'll see where we're headed. We're potentially where we're headed, time permitting. A year and a half ago, I got a shaila from a Yiddish locksmith. From a Yid. He said he was contacted by a homeowners association in the city. They asked him if they could hire him to change the locks on somebody's apartment. From a homeowners association, it was a co-op, and it seems that the individual in the apartment, who owned the apartment, had been delinquent in paying his dues to the homeowners association, or to the what in Eretz Yisrael is referred to as vad bayit. And part of the contractual obligations is that you're obligated to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000 a year for maintenance, etc. And if not, they reserve the right to limit your access to your apartment. This fellow had been living there for 17 years. and he had never once paid his dues. And they had munned him, and he never had an excuse. He just said, yeah, Mirz Hashem. When I tell people to come to Night Seder, tell Balabatim, come to, they say, Mirz Hashem. I say, Hashem Reitza. I promise you, Hashem Reitza. Yeah. So he said, Mirz Hashem. And he's not paying. He has no taina, he has no nothing. He's just not doing it. This fellow decided to renovate. He left, moved out for a few months, and there's work going on in the apartment. They contacted this locksmith that they want him to change, to break the locks, take the locks off the apartment, change the locks. It's a Fruma owner, a Fruma HA, and a Fruma locksmith. So the locksmith came to me and he asked me, is he allowed to do it? So I asked him, what are you going to gain? He'll also hire a locksmith. He'll get your locks off. So he explained that the Homeowners Association has a lot more time and resources. He needs his house. So yeah, he said fakir. That's how you can make. He said it's a big job. It's a good job because he's going to break the locks, put on a new lock. They'll break the locks, take it off. It'll go back and forth a few times. And he said eventually the guy's going to run out of patience, geduld, and he's going to pay up his dues. So here we have a shaila of it in his dinul and nafshe. Is the HA allowed to do that? Are they allowed to break the locks of someone else's apartment to prevent him from going into his apartment in order to get what's owed to them? You also have a shaila, even if they're allowed to do it, are they allowed to do it al yidei shliach? Is he allowed to do this? He's not the HA, he's not the one owed the money, they are. They're owed the money, so if they want to go ahead and break the locks, by all means, be my guest. Right? But he's not the one who's owed the money. Is he allowed to do it? That was the second shaila. And this is one shaila of Abed in his Dinul and Nafshe. It's mamish, the kishkus of the sugya in Siman Daled in Shulchan Aruch, in Baba Kama Chav Zayin Chav Ches. This is mamish, this is the sugya. That's one shaila. Another shaila of Abed in his Dinul and Nafshe, or Al Kapanim, the sugya of Hakah, I should say, is a shaila I got from two Bachram. So in the second half of the summer, I'm the Marada Asra in Camp Aguda. Rabbi Sol Reisman is there the first half, I'm there the second half. And for whatever reason, Camp Aguda seems to be a focal point of that area, and I'll get shilas not just from camp, from other Masmidim camps and other camps and whatever it is. Two Bachrim come, I'm not going to say from where, they come, they have a Din Torah. Ma'aser Shahaya, a few weeks ago. They're both part of they're in a learning camp. And second Seder, they learn morning Seder, they have shir until 1 o'clock. In the afternoon they have activities, leagues, whatever it is. Dirshu versus Aguda, yeah, the teams. And second Seder is somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock until 7:30 is second Seder, then they have supper, then they have night Seder. So Reuven and Shimon come to me, and Reuven is being Tevei Shimon. What's the story? Shimon was in bed during second Seder, and Reuven is a bacher in this learning camp, and he tells Shimon, look, you're sleeping during second Seder. It's not so many of us. Aguda has a robust Masmidim program, 200 bachrim, and 1 or 2 bachrim are missing, nishkaferlach. But you could have some learning camps, 40, 50 bachrim, 60 bachrim. You have a few bachrim missing, it destroys the whole situation. So he's waking up, he told Shimon, if you sleep through second Seder, I'm waking you up. Fine. 6:30 in the afternoon, Shimon is sleeping in bed. Reuven comes to him, and he says, Shimon, get up. And Shimon says, leave me alone. I'm in camp. It's Ben Azman. Lamachab. So Reuven says, Shimon, you got to wake up. It's not fair. It's not fair to the Olam. You got to wake up. Shimon says nothing to it. So Reuven tells Shimon, there's a nice shahaya. Says, if you don't wake up, I'm pulling your blankets off. So Shimon says, if you pull my blankets off, I'm going to throw a rock at you. So Reuven went ahead and he said, 1, 2, 3, and he pulled the blanket. And Shimon reached under his pillow and he pulled out a rock. I show you, and he threw it at Reuven. Right? They say you can't make it up. It's a nice show. And he hit Shimon in the forehead. He started bleeding. He ran to the camp, to this infirmary or whatever it is. I don't know if in these Masmidim programs they have infirmaries, but he ran to the guy in the kitchen. Yeah, he was used to sewing up chickens, and he says, "You got to go to the hospital. This looks like a deep cut." So they went and took him to the hospital. He went to the hospital. They said, "He needs stitches." So they said that they don't have a plastic surgeon on site. You know, you have to know what a hospital is in the mountains. Yeah. It's a barn, there's 3 horses and 2 people there. Yeah? They don't have a plastic surgeon on site. So they said, look, we can glue it up. It may be a scar. His parents said nothing doing. You know, you have to look good for shidduchim. Mind you, the boy was 75 pounds overweight, but they said you have to look good for shidduchim. We got to get you a plastic surgeon. So they go, they find him a plastic surgeon. Plastic surgeon doesn't take insurance. There's no eitzah. They need the stitches. They want to sew him up without a scar. Needed 8 stitches. Reuven is being teveh Shimon $975. So Shimon tells Reuven, you had no right to be waking me up. Why are you waking me up for? You started up with me, and I warned you, and I asked you to leave me alone, and I told you to leave me alone. You didn't leave me alone. I had to get rid of you. He also told him, he said, you paid for your surgery? Your parents paid for your surgery. So if your parents come, I'll have a din Torah with them. That's what he told him. He also tied it to him. He said, who said that you should have surgery? Who says you should have stitches? Maybe you should have glued it up so you'd have had a scar. Yeah, the Gemara says. And the Gemara says, "Fakeret, Torah is better. You put yayin in a kankan shel cheres." Yeah. So this is a din Torah. These were the tainas back and forth. So Reuven tells Shimon, this is really what happened. Yeah. I once heard from a chashuv Rav that somehow you always have good mices on a plane. Only Rabbanim get good mices because Rabbi Shem sends you parnasa. Yeah. This is a din Torah. It's a real din Torah. So Reuven answers back and he says, my parents asked me to be teveya. He says, I had no business waking you up. Second Seder. I had to wake you up second Seder. And you warned me you're going to throw a rock? I'm supposed to believe that you were going to throw a rock? So Shimon said, Grabda, yeah, you should have believed it because yesterday there was a guy who tried waking me up and I threw a jar of hot peppers at him. That's what he told him. So this was the din Torah that they had. And the shaila is hadin in me. This is shaila number 2. The last day of camp, I got an anonymous letter delivered on my shtender. I don't know who sent it. I have no idea who sent it. I don't know if the boy was in camp. I don't know if the boy was from out of camp. I get dozens of shailas from out of camp. Many, many. So I honestly don't know where the shaila was. With a folded piece of paper, please leave a written response on this and this shelf in the back of the Beis Medrash. Anonymous shaila. I open the paper. I'm a boy. I went to the bathroom where I was in camp, and I found an iPhone. And it was unlocked. And he said, he writes there, he says, it had internet on it. I was nichshal on the internet. Nichshal doesn't mean he went to Google. Yeah. He said, I felt horrible afterwards. So I took the phone and I went to the nearest lake and I threw it in the lake. And now I feel bad. I don't know if I did the right thing or the wrong thing. This was a device that could be machshel a bacher. I don't know who owned it. I don't know if a bacher owns it. I don't know if an adult owns it. I don't know who owns it, but it was unfiltered. Ramatasio Shlita, Ramatasio Salman Zal Gesundsein, Refuah Shleima once said, and Shmuel Shlita Zal Gesundsein, he said, They both told me, Matzio said it publicly, but Shiva told me he holds it's accurate, that if Chazal would have had iPhones in their days, they would have assered yichud with an iPhone, with unfiltered internet. And it's a davar pasha like that. So he says, on the one hand, I was being matzel somebody from an isser. On the other hand, I don't know if I did the right thing. This was the shaila I got. He asked for a written tshuva. I felt terrible. I said, wants to know if he has to find the owner. Does he have to return it? What tshuva should he do? Shvera shaila. These are three shailas. All of them touch on one angle or another these sugyas. And I'll try to get to... I hope maybe we'll be able to be zeicha to touch all three. And if not, at least you'll know the shilas that... you know some of the shilas Rabbanim are getting. Yeah? And let's start with the first shilah, the locksmith. So we have over here an individual who is delinquent in his vad bayit, in his dues to the homeowners association. Now, it would seem that they have no recourse. It's been going on for 17 years. It would seem they have very limited ability to get what's due to them. I guess besides for taking him to court where the costs are prohibitive. Many times people refrain from taking others to court simply, or the entire for that matter, unfortunately, because the costs are prohibitive. You have to hire in court you have to hire a lawyer, and in Batei Din, unfortunately the places that allow tayanim end up being clown court, but you have to hire a tayan. It takes a lot more money than a lawyer a lot of times. And even if you're going to a bezdin that's an elucha bezdin, the dayanim have schar batala, so they take equally from both sides, but it costs money. It depends on how many moshe bezdins you have. And it seems that they have no recourse. And anyways, the sugya of avadin ishdin l'nafshei is before the tircha or without the tircha of going to bezdin. So we know that in Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Dalid, there are numerous shittas with respect to the shaila of being teveya achayv. Are you allowed to be done dina l'nafshei where you're getting a person to be pereya achayv? It's machlekes in the Rishayim, the Rosh, the Martcha, the Mechaber Paskins that Yachol Adam Lasses Din La'atzmei Imraya Shaloi B'Yaracha Shegazloi Yachol L'Kachta Miyadai V'Ma'achar Oimid Kenegda Yachol Ha'Kaisei Ad She'ani Chenu Im Lo Yuchal Lahatzel B'Inyan Acher. If you have no recourse, you have no other eitzah, you could do what you need to do to get your money. Afilu hu davar she'ein by hefsid. Im yamtim ad she'yamidenu b'din. Even if it's something where there's no hefsid. Nonetheless, the halacha is v'hu sheyachol levarer sheshalohu neitel b'din. You have, as long as you can be mevarer that you're taking what's rightfully yours, Mechaber says, avid in ishdinu l'nafshei. Now the Ramah over here brings 2 days. This is the Shiloh of Ein Rishus Lamashkanei B'chayv. The Ramah says that which you can't be mamashkin is maybe dafka on a chayv mamish. That's where there's an isser to be mamashkin. But if not, you're allowed even to take a mashkin. As I state in Ramah, there's a shita that you're allowed to take a mashkin even of a chayv that's ba shaloi machman sava. V'yeshaim deloy amin and avid in ishdin l'nafshei rak b'chaypetz hamavur loy shu shaloi ki gain shegazloi areitz l'gazloi areitz l'azikai. Over there yachol hatzel shaloi avalon kvar neschayv l'mikayach gezelim makamacher loy. Ramah brings another shita. Yeshaimim. This is the shita of the Martcha, that the only time we say avid in ishdin l'nafshei is only on a chaypetz hamavur. Somebody came. He stole something from me. He took money from me. So over there, I can get it back. But if somebody owes me money from something, there's no chayfetz hamavur, it's a chayv. It could be it's tali and zakvan alav b'milva, veisach nish genoi. Depends, you can clarify. but he owes me something. He owes me an item, an object. Over there, Ovid in Ishdil Nafshe. But if not, not. Now, typically, we know that the halacha is that if you have two Yesh Aimrims in Shulchan Aruch, we paskin like the Yesh Aimrim Basra. So the Yesh Aimrim Basra over here is the Mordcha. So l'chayra would come out, in our case, this fellow owes money for chayvus of 17 years, but there's no chayfetz hamavurah. Nach the shita the mechaber and the Yesh Aimrim in the Ramah, the first Yesh Aimrim Ramah, the halacha would be Ovid in Shtul Nafshe, and maybe you could even take a mashkin for it. Nach the Mordcha, it would seem that the halacha is that they can't lock him out of his house. Because maybe you can block him from going to his house. That's a different shayla, but for sure not to take his locks off, where you're breaking his item, and you're taking away something from him, or you're being mazik him, there's no chayvet samavur, and l'chayr the halacha should be that it's aser. Now, l'maisa, there's a very interesting Tshuvas Hari B'Samim, which is not in your Mar Mekaymis. But I'll read you his Lashon. Shal Tshuvas Hari B'Samim Tinyana Simen Reish Mem. Derech Agav, he has a case over there of a case where someone wanted to be done to Doniel Nafshe, and he writes, Lefum Riyate, the Hari B'Samim, Haloi Mevur B'Chay Shem Mishpatzim and Dal De B'Chayv Shal Schiris Ovid in Ish Doniel Nafshe. He says, for a davar pashat, a Chayv Shal Schiris, somebody owes money on Schiris, it's Ovid in Ish Doniel Nafshe. So it's very schwer. The Ramah over here brings two Yesh Aimrims, and it would seem that we pass him like the Yesh Aimrim Basra. That's normally the halacha. What's the pshat in this Ramah? Or what's the pshat in the Hari B'Samim? It would seem that Ashkenazim, the halacha should be that you're not allowed to be done Doniel Nafshe. I think that the answer is, the simple answer, the reason why the Hari B'Samim had a pasha like that is because the way to read this Ramah is not the way I read it originally. There's a din, or there's a klal in psak that a stam va'achakach yesh aimrim, we paskin like stam. So if the mechaber says halacha b'stam, and the Ramah comes and he says v'yesh aimrim, that's a stam va'achakach yesh aimrim. If it's yesh aimrim and yesh aimrim, we paskin like the second yesh aimrim. Over here, what's the stam? The mechaber is the stam. Mechaber says halacha avid in ishdin l'nafshe, even on a chayv, just you can't be mamashkin, can't take a mashkin. On that, Dr. Ramah, one Yesh Aimrim, that the din of taking a mashkin, if you want to take a mashkin, if it's an old chayv, habamach you're allowed to take a mashkin. Only al tavo you can't. And then the Ramah brings an entirely different Yesh Aimrim, that Yesh Aimrim stamazah you need a chayvet samavura. But I think that both Yesh Aimrims are going on the stam of the mechaber. Over there, the halacha would be that we pass him like the mechaber. The Ramah brings a Yesh Aimrim, there's a makam to be machmir, but makam other sveikis could be we would be more knighted to be machmir. But I think that over here, the two Yesh Aimrims in Ramah are all built on the stam of the mechaber, and that's why the Hari B'Samim them for a davar pashut. That by a chayv yashan haba mi makam acher, the halacha is chayv habamach maschiris avid in ishdin l'nafshe. And according to that, over here, the HA would have the right to be done dina l'nafshayu, even for the old, even though it's an old chayv, it's not a chayvet samavur. Now, l'maisa, l'daiti, I think that they could be done dina l'nafsham even nach the martcha. Because you see, this individual is delinquent on previous chayvais. But he's also not intending to pay his dues going forward. He has a track record, this individual. Where a person has a track record, there's a halacha. It's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. I don't know why, but in the Mar Mekaymis here it didn't make it in. I think I must have not spoken clearly on the phone. I see Siman Tov Aleph, Sif Aleph is here. It's supposed to be Sif Vav. I'm not sure why it's Siman Tov Aleph, Sif Aleph. It's a Tov Chaf Aleph, I'm sorry. Sif Aleph has no shaykhis. It's Sif Vav. The Ramah over here writes, and this is gebayt on a din in a martcha in Baba Kama, Mishi yesh loy mesharis v'chayshish sheyignov loy yuchal lo hitziyah kaidem zman haskiris v'im mesarev yachal lahakoisei ad sheyetze. If you have somebody that came to your property and you're chayshish that they're going to cause you a hezek, the Amshashlaima talks about a case where it's yatzal of kol shehu ganef. There's a koil, the guy's a ganef. The halach is you can demand it to get out, and if he doesn't want to leave, advid inish dina l'nafshe, says you could beat him up until he leaves. And so you see that Avid inish dina l'nafshe, especially over here where the HA has the rights to the stairwells and to the access to all the public areas in the building. This person is not any less than Misha Yatza Olav Koil Shehu Ganef. He's a lot more worse than that. He's a Ganef. Yeah? And in such a case, it's true, while it's true that Efsher out the past, you would say that it would be Talui in the Machlokes between the Mordcha and the other Paiskim. If Avid inish dina l'nafshe and a chayfetz she'enai mevurer, but in this case, going forward, you still l'kulei alma you'd have Avid inish dina l'nafshe. And therefore, it would seem lahalacha that we have a right to allow this HA to be done dina l'nafshe to prevent this homeowner from going in. Now, there's a whole nother side to the sugya of the dina del malchusa, and that really depends on the laws in each place. I don't know what the laws here are in Florida. In New York, the way we refer to tenants, renters, is Chazal say Kallah koine eved koine adon la'atzmai. We replace the word eved and we put in renter. If you have a renter, you're koine adon la'atzmai. It's a davar yadu in New York. But if you're a homeowner, then you're a Russia. New York doesn't like homeowners. So homeowners, you can do whatever you want with them. You can come in and squat in someone else's house, and the squatter probably has more rights than the homeowner. And the only way the homeowner can get his rights back is if he comes and he squats in the squatter's house. Yeah. But al kapanim, with respect to Dina de Malchusa, you'd have to dan say on the halachas of renters and say on the halachas of homeowners. If I'm not mistaken, what I was told in this case is that it was legal. What they were doing was legal. I presume that the reason is because it was a HA and there were stipulations in the contract. And in any event, it would seem that this is Nacha and Ladina.
Once they change the locks, do they have the right to demand anything more than the rent going forward?
So, you could be Teveh whatever you want, right? Right now, you could be Teveh anything you want.
Right, I'm saying if he says, okay, I'll pay going forward.
I'm not doing a Pa'ula anymore.
In that point,
I was Mazaki already, and I had a right to be Mazaki. Now the Shaila over here is another Nakuda, and that is the other point that we touched on. What about being done Dina l'nafshe al yedei shliach? Could I be done Dina l'nafshe al yedei shliach? So there's a famous Chakira about the Geder of Avid inish Dina l'nafshe. I heard Rabbi Blazer mentioned it yesterday. The famous Chakira, and could be it's Tali and Rishainim. There's the Kedukim in the Rishainim, and there's a lot of Masumat, and there are Stira Diyukim in many of the Rishainim in the Rosh Befrat. But it's possible that you can be Toila the Shaila of being Avid Dina l'nafshe al Yidei Shliach in the Shaila in the Lumdus of Adam Dan Dina l'nafshe, which means like this. If the person being done Dina l'nafshe has a Shem Dayan, which in essence really there's mashmois in Shulchan Aruch like that, then the halacha l'chayra would be that he could appoint a shliach too. Every bezdin can appoint a shliach bezdin. If his ability to be done dina l'nafshe is al-tzadin shliach bezdin, he's a proxy of a bezdin, it's not so pashut for a shliach bezdin to be mamana shliach bezdin. And it could be you would not have the right to be done dina l'nafshe al yidei shliach, and it could be it's talui in the lumdus of it in dina l'nafshe. I don't think it's muchrach, but it's hitachen. It's a milsa de mistabra. And l'maisa, this is the subject of a great shmuz in the Gedolei Ha'achrayim, and it's rooted in the Ramah. The Ramah in Shulchan Aruch in Siman Daled, right after the Ramah that we read, the Ramah continues. He says, "V'davka hu ba'atzmai yachol lemeva dina l'nafshe, aval osir lasas al yidei goyim." You're allowed to be done dina l'nafshe, dafka you yourself, but al yidei goyim not. Which would mean, if you're going to hire a locksmith, it would sound like you dafka have to hire a yid, not a guy. So the Shah is, how over here, how are you medayik this Ramah? The Ramah starts off, dafka hu ba'atzmai. Sounds like dafka you yourself. But then the Ramah ends off and he says, Avolay al yidei goyim. It sounds like al yidei yid, you're allowed to. So as with everything in halacha, it's vital to be ma'ayin in the shayresh hadavar. I think one of the greatest kilkulim that exists today in halacha is that people don't learn. People think there's learning and then there's halacha. And halacha is like, it's a lot of textbooks, rules, lists of dinim. Rabbi said there's no chiluk between sugyas and halacha. You learn a sugya and you're masik shmaitza aliba de hilchasa. And if you start from the halacha and you don't learn the sugya, you should know that you don't know the halacha either. You have to learn kidabai, the proper oifen. And those who learn sugyas and they're not masik shmaitza aliba de hilchasa, so it just means that they left out an aspect of the sugya. That's it. There's no reason why the Pnei Yeshua's lumdus in the sugya is more chashiv than the shach and the taz, if I'm not mistaken. Many times the shach, the taz, the Pri Megadim, these were all b'nei dairam, maybe earlier than the Pnei Yeshua, around the Pnei Yeshua. Some sefer, chedushech, some sefer on shas is used lahalacha all the time. Reb Kiveger's, Reb Shmuel Paskin straight from Reb Kiveger all the time. Wie kann man dingen after Reb Kiveger? He says. Reb Kiveger is nicht pasha. So Madav does wissen. The Elam has to know that. And as with everything in halacha, relying on a kitzer. There's a famous ma'aseh with the Rogatchover. They came to the Rogatchover with the Sefer Kitzer Shulchan Aruch. Kitzer Shulchan Aruch. Shmuel told me, you could be a person learns Kitzer Shulchan Aruch, you could be Saimach on Kitzer Shulchan Aruch if you want. Eid is Mishnah Berurah, but you have a right to be Saimach Kitzer Shulchan Aruch. It's recommended. People don't know halacha, you could be Saimach on it. Can't become a Paisik based on Kitzer Shulchan Aruch. Or Mishnah Berurah for that matter. Become a paisik if you learn the sugyas. I'll leave the sugyas v'yis daf design. So they came to the Rogatchover Gain. The Rogatchover was a very sharfa yid, like Elul Yatzim. My Zayda told me over once that there was a yid who came to him with a sefer and he asked him for haskama to the Rogatchover. So the Rogatchover asked him if he has a name for the sefer yet. So he said no. So the Rogatchover told him, before I give you Askama, you should call it Yein Kafrisen. So he asked him, what's up with Yein Kafrisen? So he says, because Mei Raglayim Yafin La. That's what the Rogatchover told him. Rabbi Kallah Zatzal, when he went to the Rogatchover, he told him he was a balabas. Rogatchover asked him who he is. He said he's a balabas. Because he was scared. The Rogatchover used to talk to people in learning. He was an Elul Yatzim, Rogatchover. He had everything in front of his nose. So after a baron came in, he spoke to him in learning. He left. The Rogatchover commented to somebody, "Nicht schlecht for a balabas." So, nit pashit. So they brought the Kitzer Shulchan Aruch to the Rogatchover. The Rogatchover said, "Mam gemacht a Kitzer von dem euch." Shulchan Aruch is a Kitzer. Anyone who knows Shulchan Aruch knows Shulchan Aruch is based on Beis Yosef and Darkei Moshe. Beis Yosef is a long sefer, brings Rishonim. With Lamdasim, with uptight in the Rishonim, how the Beis Yosef learned the Rishonim. Beis Yosef is a sefer Aruch. The Ramah wrote a sefer Darkei Moshe Aruch, which in many places is as long as the Beis Yosef. Then he was Mekatzer to Darkei Moshe, the Darkei Moshe we have. Then the Beis Yosef was Mekatzer his Beis Yosef into Shulchan Aruch, which is essentially an index of halachas that come from Beis Yosef. And the Ramah was Mekatzer his Aruch. So you have to take, when you see a Ramah, you have to go back to the Shayrish. The Shayrish of the Ramah is a tshuva and a Trumas Hadeshen. Trumas Hadeshen in Siman Shin Dalid Shin as it's printed in many, referred to in many places. Over there he has a long shtickle about a chayv that had already passed over a Shemitah. And the lender, since he had written in the contract that he could be Taiveya it in court, he wanted to know, maybe Shemitah is not Meshamet, he could go to a Goyish court to take it. He wanted to be Zayvar and La Yigais. And the Trumas Hadeshen over there goes into the sugi of Shemitah, and Shemitah's Ksafim B'day Reisenu. And Teichat Dvarim, in the end, he speaks about being kaifa, forcing a loiva, a borrower, using Goyim to force a borrower to pay up. And he says like this. He says to go to our kois, to go to Goyish court, lav bezdin mikri klal. And he says, therefore, afilu shari l'kaifa bezraya b'gvuras yad afilu achi al yidei nachrim aser la'asuyeh. You can't use Goyim to force. T'chia gavna kasav ha-mordcha. Says the Mordcha writes in the end of Agoizel Kama, afilu b'midi dedinoi kol da'alam govar. Even where there's a halacha, may the strongest man win. There are cases in Shulchan Aruch where the din is that when Bezdin has a suffix, kol da'alam govar, two people are coming in, they're fighting about a boat. Nobody's a muhsik. A shailan, Taisis, how you learn. Gemara Baba Basra. So the halach is, if we don't have a raya, we say kol da'alam govar. Let them fight it out. May the best man win, like they say. Zok the Chumas Hadeshen, afilu b'midi dedina kol da'alam govar in litkayv ula'alam echad al yidei chaver al yidei nachrim klal, demechur hadover la'asuyeh al yidei nachrim. So if you look at the Chumas Hadeshen, you see clearly that the Chumas Hadeshen says that the chasarain in being toifus al yidei nachrim is why mechur hadover la'asuyeh al yidei nachrim. Now you have to know, Ramesh Tshuva brings his Chumas Hadeshen, he's matmi on him. He shteltzu kol da'alam govar. Anybody who learns the sugyas in Baba Basra and Baba Metzia, the beginning of Baba Metzia knows the din of kol da'alam govar is kapshuta. It's a psak bezdin. It's a gather. It's a din. There's a din shuda de daini. There's a din yachloiku. Kol da'alam govar is a psak, and the Rosh explains the psak. The Rosh says that kol da'alam govar is a method in psak because we assume that the one who's the rightful owner will exert himself more to be able to come out on top. That's the Rosh says. The Rosh says the oifen of birur. So l'chayra, it's pashut that kol da'alam govar, you can't hire a guy. You shouldn't even be able to hire a yid, but you can hire a guy for sure. I hire a guy, so what's the birur of kol da'alam govar? You have to know why that's a tzushtal b'chlal to avin in ishdina l'nafshe. But in any event, this is the source of the Ramah. And it would seem to be clear from the source of the Ramah that it's dafka an issue with goyim, but it's not an issue to use a shliach Yisrael. Now, there's a marit in a tshuva in Simcha of Beis who argues on the Chumas Hadeshen straight up, and he says, Avin in Ishdin Nafshe, you could even use Goyim. That's what he says. And it could be fakert, even if you can't use by Kol Da'alam Govar, but Avin in Ishdin Nafshe, technically Bezdin could be Kaif al Yidei Goyim at times. And again, it could be, this is also tali in the Hagdara of what Avin in Ishdin Nafshe is. The Ma'aser Ramah Paskins the Chumas Hadeshen. Now, Ladina, there's a big machlokes in Achrayim. Although it's a davar mavur in the Chumas Hadeshen, and it's very hard to even have a discussion about it, there are numerous Gedolei HaAchrayim brought down into the Sefer Steichemed. I wouldn't be familiar with any of these Svarim without the Steichemed. Steichemed is Marechas Ayin in Klal Aleph. Steichemed wrote a magnum opus on every topic in Kallah Kula, and it's relied on for Psak Halacha, the Steichemed. In many places, Mishnah Berurah brings him, Bir Halacha brings him, Hilchos Yom Kippurim, Bir Halacha brings the Steichemed. So Steichemed, in his Marechas Ayin in Klal Aleph, he brings a whole list of Friedik Esfardish Apaiskim who clear this shaila. Eirach Mishpat and Chaysh Mishpat Simen Daled, Kol Shmuel and Parshas Va'era, the Mascham Me'ata, Telah Shani and Parshas B'Shalach. These are Sfardish Sfarim Al HaTorah where they were Meshalev. They wove into their drashas Al HaTorah in Yonei Halacha. Ben Ishchai wrote a sefer to be learned La Halacha. He wrote halachas that should be learned at a Shabbos table. Ben Ishchai. Al HaTorah has halacha over there. But in any event, many of these Gedolei Achrayim, the Kol Shmuel, he says, Yadua mashakasav Chumas Hadeshen simen shindalad huva b'knes hagdela chayshim mishpat simen dal b'goyis thirst of cotton aleph the davka hu atzmei aved dina l'nafshe aval osur la'asal yidei acherim. To last Shani says the same thing. L'maisa, if you look in the Knes Hagdela b'shem Chumas Hadeshen, he brought it down accurately. Davka hu atzmei aved dina l'nafshe aval osur la'asal yidei kuti. And the Steichemed already is ma'ir on these Achrayim. He says if you look in the Chumas Hadeshen, you'll see Chumas Hadeshen is stark that it's davka al yidei goy. And the pashtus in Chumas Hadeshen is that dafka yidei goyim you can't make a shliach, but yidei Yisrael you could. Now I will say, why do you need a Chumas Hadeshen? Why do I need the yukim from a Chumas Hadeshen? Look in the Ramah. Dafku atzma al yidei kuti loy. How would you explain the oisfer of the Ramah? How could you say that the Ramah would hold that it's osir even al yidei Yisrael if the Ramah ends off al yidei kuti loy? So the Sefer Erech Mishpat says a moyer de gezach. He says that if I want to be Aved Dina L'Nafshe Al Yidei Yisrael, so whose shaila is that? Who comes and asks the shaila? Avada, maybe the HA Association will come ask a shaila, right? But whose shaila is it? You go to hire a Yiddish locksmith to change somebody's locks. Whose shaila is it? The locksmith is going to ask a shaila. Is he allowed to do it? So there, it's not negeya for the Ramah to tell Reuven that you can't hire Shimon to be Aved Dina L'Nafshe. It's negeya to tell Shimon that Shimon can't go be Aved Dina on behalf of Reuven. So there, that's not a psak for the person who's coming to do Aved Dina L'Nafshe. So it wasn't negeya for the Ramah to say Dafka hu atzmei hava yidei Yisrael loy, yidei acherim loy. But if you hire a guy, Zokter, Goyim, the Shulchan Aruch wasn't written for Goyim. Goyim aren't coming asking Shilas. Yeah? Mitzvah Hashem, that's ein Balt and Art School Shulchan Aruch, and then maybe they'll be able to learn Shulchan Aruch. But until then, you have to tell a Yid you can't hire a guy. Zokter, by the Ramah, mentioned Dafka Yidei Kutim, because to say Dafka hu atzma Yidei Yisrael loy, that's not a din for the person who's coming to be done din al nafshe to Dan. That's the locksmith gets the call. He's asked to do something. He'll come. He'll ask a shayla. The Ramah is addressing the individuals coming to be done din al nafshe. So you have to tell him you can't use a guy. This is what the Eirich Mishpat says as pshat in Ramah. L'maisa the Chumas Hadeshin is mavur that his issue was with a guy, and al Yidei Yid. It seems that Chumas Hadeshin did not have an issue. Mechur hadavar lachsas al yidei goyim. Avada the shaila of the Chumas Hadeshin was going by a kodesh shel goyim. So you could say it wouldn't be a raya if he would have just said you can't do al yidei goyim. But he explains a tam. He gives a reason over there why you shouldn't, and that reason applies dafka to goyim. And l'chayra it would seem from the Chumas Hadeshin that to be aved din al nafshe yidei shliach is okay. Now the emes is I'm matmiya. I don't have an answer for this. By me for years I've had a kasha on this whole back and forth. This whole shaila if the Ramah means al yidei Yisrael or sanat or just al yidei goy. I don't know. It's l'chayra often halach in Shulchan Aruch, and I don't know the answer to this. It's something that bothers me. In Shulchan Aruch and some Shin Yutes, and I think it's in your Maram Kaimis. I'm not sure. I think so. Shulchan Aruch talks about a case. Misha hichnas peireisav lebeis chaverei shalomi daita yishetei at shehichnas peireisav v'nicham v'halach. Somebody who bought boxes of peiros and dumped them in somebody else's chutzner. This is somebody's upset at his neighbor. Neighbor blocked his driveway yesterday, and so he goes and he buys 1,000 apples, and he has them delivered to his neighbor's driveway. Yeah, a delivery of 1,000 apples. So what are you going to do with 1,000? Now his driveway is blocked. Yesh lebalabayis limker lo ma'osim ha'peres k'dei litan schar ha'poilim shemaytziin oisam. You can hire workers, and you could take those peiros and hire those workers to sell those peiros, and they keep the money to pay for their job of selling those peiros. And you get rid of the peiros. Ashaylo, you have to force midas chasida sheyedia lebaldin v'yaschira mimiksas temeim mishum hashav aveda lebailim. So midas chasidus to inform the baldim first that you're doing this. But l'chayre haga Rabbi say, how can you hire a payal? You can't be done din al nafshe al yidei shliach. L'chayr in Shulchan Aruch state that you're allowed to, unless you say yad poel ki yad balabayis. Huh? It's bigger. The Taz over there says it's also over in din al nafshe. The Taz tells su, huh? Taz tells su over in din al nafshe. Said on din al nafshe. The makor of that halach is a Rambam. And Rabbi Yerucham says that which you're allowed to be mitzi pareisim meshusai when you're machna shlemi daita is midin dan adam dan din al nafshe. And l'chayra, it would seem that it's often halacha that you're allowed to do al yidei shliach. And I don't have a good yishuv to this raya. And so for this case, halacha l'maisa, it would seem,
How do you own it to be able to sell it?
It's not. He's forcing me to hire pilin. He's being mazik me.
How can someone buy it?
It's his achrayus to get rid of it. He has to pay the pilin. It's not stam I have a right to take it. It's all a part of the fact that Ba'atzim he has the sachrayas. So I'm using his shavik kesef to pay the pilim. They could keep the apples too.
If there's
Right?
any leftover money, who would keep it?
The Balabayas will keep it. Of course the Balabayas will keep it. It's Hashavas Aveda.
So then it's the Balabai sending the Shliach.
Huh?
Then it's the Balabai sending the Shliach. Not the
Yeah, but it's true that it's the Balabai is paying for the shliach, but to actually do the pu'ula, to throw it out into the shuk, they're my shluchim. Now it's true, I'm paying him from there. Right?
People buy these apples. Who are they buying them?
it's Aveda Midas. I don't know. Maybe it's Aveda Midas also. Glad Aveda Midas not supposed to allowed to be Zeich in it, but Al Kapanim. But now, he says Payalim. I don't know. It's hard to say Gayim. It's the Makar is Rabbeinu Yerucham. Rabbeinu Yerucham states Mefurish. Avada. That's also true. It could be in a Makam, or else you'd have a Chiv to be Mediyah him after. So the Chelik, you're not Mechiv to be Mediyah, is Altstam. Ken Zayin. But the Etzem Din is the Din of Adam Dan Dil Nafshe. Let's come now, Rabbi Say, to the second Shaila. The second Shaila of somebody waking up a friend. So, over here, what do we have? We have Ruvain is waking up Shimon. Do you have a right to wake somebody up? You have a right to wake somebody up. I don't know where Gezel Shena comes from. But Al Kapanim is nicht erger von Einoaz Devarim. It's no less than Einoaz Devarim. You have no right to wake somebody up. You have no right to block me from walking into my house. Just like somebody who's Memalech es Chatzeri Paris, somebody who fills up my chatzah with Paris, he's ma'akev me from utilizing my reshus. The halacha is I could get rid of your stuff. If you prevent me from sleeping in a way that's shaloi al pidin, so I have the right to stop you. Now, Narvas, the halacha is that you can't do more than what's necessary to be done, and this is also muchrach from the sugya of Adam Dan Din Nafshe. The Gemara wants to bring a raya that we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda that b'makam delekap seida loyavad dinish din nafshe. The Gemara wants to bring a raya from dachvay la elyon. The Gemara has a case of shar shalach al bechaber. The Gemara says dachvay la elyon is chayiv. Dachvay la elyon. If his shar climbed on top of my shar and it's smothering it to death, and I pushed his shar off, I'm chayiv for the hezek. Why am I chayiv for the hezek? Yavad dinish din nafshe. So the Gemara says the answer is you should have pulled your behemoth out. The top one would have landed softer. It would have been a softer landing. Maybe you wouldn't have been genizikt. And since it was efshebin yinacher, it wasn't necessary. You had other recourse, and since you had other recourse, so the halacha is that you're held accountable. You're held to account. The same halacha applies with respect to adam hachayvel b'chavei, right? And this is gepaskend in Shulchan Aruch and Tav Chafal of Sif Yud Gimel, and the Shirish is in a rush. Shteit halacha shnayim shechavlu ze bazem chavlu echad b'chavei yosim mima shechavlu b'hu misham loy b'moisin ezik shalim. The halacha is that if two people are chayvel ze bazeh, if you were mazik your friend more than he was mazik you have to pay. Dafka sheschilu shneim ke'echad, or it was la'achar shechavlu ze b'chavei chazagam hu b'chavel boy. Avalam hischala echad hasheni potter sheyesh le reshus l'sheni lachbavay kedei lahatzel atzmai. I have the right to be chayvel in you. V'cheinu linyin gidufim ubiyushim. If someone starts up with you, you have the right to respond. Now, I will point out this is not al pi musar. Yeah, al pi musar we try to teach ourselves. And elavim veinam elvim shemim charpasim veinam meshivim. Olav akasav oimer va'eav ketzeis hashemesh begvurasei. Many a machloikas can be avoided with just a drop of self-control. Just a drop. Just last week, I know somebody who did an enormous taiva for somebody else. An enormous taiva. Somebody is busy publishing something. A young man lives near me. And this fellow was putting something together and he sent a copy to this young man to show him what he's doing. And the young man took it and he reorganized it and he sent it back to him. And he sent it back to me. I think he wrote in an email. The way it sounded to me was he wrote in an email, here, look at this, use it. And the individual working on the publication sent him, I mamish got this called Matzah Shabbos. I was trying to go to sleep early and I was busy with this issue. He sent him a nasty, mamish, a vitriolic email. A chutzpah, you take my things and you touch it and you change it, and you're a ganef and you're going to use it, and I ask you from using a mamash a gan salanga drasha. He had enough seichel to call somebody. You call somebody, speak it over with somebody. Bas dina batal dina. So I told him to write back, just try to write back as friendly and as nice and as genuine as possible. that I sent it for you, and it had nothing to do with me, and it's very short and sweet and kind and nice, and don't say anything else. Don't respond, don't. And when I was here in Florida yesterday, after I landed, I got a call from the one who had sent it, that the person read it, he felt mamish, he felt so bad. He felt so bad. He called him up to apologize. He said, I feel bad, I attacked you and I didn't mean to attack. I have such charata and it's el. So you know what it could have been? You could have turned out, it could have had a war. Literally a war. Because sometimes people lose themselves. That's the Metzias Advarim. People lose themselves. I was once with the Yeshiva by Rosh Shmuel Shlita by a speaking event in Brooklyn, in Boston. He used to go for Irgun Shirei Torah. And there was a fellow came over to him, must have been very upset at the Yeshiva. Rosh Shmuel used to get it, still does get involved in Shalom Bayis issues. And the Metzias is when you get involved in Machleksim, you have to try to make peace. The Rosh and Archas Chaim says they end up making peace and you end up being hated by both sides. Yeah, it's Ma'aseh B'chol Yom. And that's how Shmuel told me he could fill up a stadium with his enemies, and it's probably true. So this fellow came at Geschrien, just yelling at him in the hallway. A few people tried to get involved in the Yeshiva. He said, no. And the fellow screaming in his face, mamish like this. I think he was 86 at the time. 12, 13 years ago. A little while ago. And mamish yelling at him. And he wasn't making any face. He's looking at him in the eye, and he's listening, and he's nodding his head. And at the end, she said, I thank you, I hear what you're saying. I'm sorry you feel that way. Then he went in and he gave his shir. So the next time I was in Philadelphia, I said, Yeshiva, nothing, no reaction garnished. So Yeshiva told me, he says, you didn't hear him. So I said, we all heard him. Shanemo, we heard him. The whole Flatbush heard him. You weren't listening to him. You didn't hear what he was saying. He was telling you that he's in pain. So if you listen and you hear that he's in pain, so what are you going to answer back? He's in pain. He's telling you he's bitzar. That's Ma'aseh B'chol Yom. So this is Shaloi Al Pi Musar, Rabbi. This is Al Pi Din. Shuras Hadin. Lecharver Yerushalayim Elosh Al She'emidu Divrayim Al Din Torah. Up in Shulchan Aruch state you can fight back. Yeah, you could start. You could be matzli yourself. It's good to be matzli yourself. Don't get me wrong. And if there's no way to be matzli yourself, maybe you're mechuyev to be matzli yourself. But in Shulchan Aruch state you're allowed to fight back. So the Rosh over here, the source of this halach is a Rosh in Siman Yud Gimel. I think the Elam has it in their Contrasim. The Rosh over here in Siman Yud Gimel talks about what happens if you, let's see, where is it?
41.
Page 41? 41. Oh, what does that? Umiut tzarich leimer dem hoye yachol hatzal atzme b'chaval muetes v'chaval by harbe chayav. Suck the Rosh. When you fight back, if you could save yourself with a chaval muetes, say someone's hitting you, and you can stop him by just pushing him away somehow without hurting him. The halach is if you hurt him in a way that's disproportionate, you chayav. Midi dahava ayachol lahatzal be'echad me'evara v'hargay. There's a din by a roidif. If somebody's chasing after somebody else to kill, Reuben's chasing after Shimon to kill him. The halach is by a roidif, you're allowed to kill the roidif. But if you're able to be matzal be'echad me'evara, you could shoot him in the leg and wound him, and you deliberately kill him, the halach is yichayev. Zok the Rosh, the same halach over here. So the Yam Shel Shloima.
He could have hit him 100 times. He couldn't stop him taking water 90 times.
But in Yena case with so there's a Yam Shel Shloima.
For exaggeration,
so there's a Yam Shel Shloima. There's a Yam Shel Shloima, and the Yam Shel Shloima is in Siman Chav Vav. The arrow is in Siman Chav Zayin. I probably misspoke when I said it. I apologize if I did. It's in Siman Chav Vav. Yam Shel Shloima brings this Rosh, and the Yam Shel Shloima says, "Amar Diki Yisaid." He says, "Matoivu manoim dvarav." It's in the second column, 7 lines from the top. Matoivu manoim dvarav. Ke'enza pasuk maharam beperak hagoyz. L'basar mikol makom dvarim elu tzrichim bir. The pshita mashachava ba yaiser min aroi kigain acher shenishma kvar hamuka mimenu sheitzel zatzmai makma shokar hika oiser v'chazar hamuka v'chava ba yaiser mashatzarach atzel zatzmai. If you got him away and you continue hitting him, and you hit him and you hit him and you hit him and you hit him, and he's already down on the ground, and you're still clapping him. Avada aval pishaim by din Russia daviksas oines. They know the nitvas al tzairoi v'yitzroi agbari. V'oida adarabah harishan hershia v'hischil v'nasa Russia mikal makam midin tashlum and loy miftar hasheni. That's the Rush. Bazok there, avalam hika harishan amaschil b'sheni makas lechi. If you hit him, you slapped him across the face. V'zeh chazav v'hika oisa v'hiftzia roisha. This guy slaps you across the face, and you turn around. V'hiftzia roisha. You know what it means, v'hiftzia roisha? How do we explain it? You crack a skull. Yeah. Ain't nearly sheyishalem and amaiser. Zok the Yamsha Shloima, you're not chayiv. Why not? Zok there. The mi yucha l'shayir lahatzel atzmai bekava mi de limshal berucha l'tzamtzim kichut ha'sayra shalo Yosef. When you react to something, you're going to sit and you're going to dan and you're going to declare exactly. You know what this is? I think in Florida they don't have this problem, but in New York we have this problem. When police officers, there are plenty of them who are Rishayim Gemurim. Efsha al pi roiv. Yeah? But a police officer has to react to somebody on the spot. You know what happens if he stops and he thinks? Yeah? That will be the last time he ever thinks. Yeah? So, Zot Yam Shashleima Mekanished, what are you supposed to do? You can't be Medaktik Kuchot HaSayra. And Fakir, I think the Ekemar is a raya to that Yisaid. What Rav Nachman was saying was that Be'etzim you have the recht. You could have gone stark. You didn't have to be Medaktik to do one or two. You could have hit him hard until he left. You can't go overboard. You can't go overboard. So Rabbi say, what's the case? What's the halacha over here? Fellow's sleeping. Oh, 1 second. Fellow's sleeping. Yeah? And he reaches, I want to give you a theoretical case. He reaches over to the dresser, and the first thing his arm gets would be a rock. Throws it. Yeah? I think Dachli Yam Shashleim, he'd be potter.
Try telling him to go away several times before.
Yeah. Well, I think Dachli Yam Shashleim, he'd be potter. The Imrei Baruch brings this Yam Shashleim lahalach. Imrei Baruch brings. Now again, the guy's sleeping. He reaches over. The first thing he gets is a rock. Throws it. Zok the Yam Shashleim, you're potter. I think the Yam Shashleim would say potter. Here, though, you see the problem over here is that this was premeditated. I asked the boy, I said, my entire Bidl, you couldn't go to sleep with a shoe? Like a rock? And yesterday you threw a jar of hot peppers? That, even though the Yam Shashleim, it's not the b'shas chamimus, I lost myself. Avadi, you lost yourself. But even when you were calm, you lost yourself. You planned to do this. And if you plan to do it, it's a davar pashut that he's chayiv. I will say that there's about 100, no shaila, but it's you don't have the Yam Shashleim as taina.
What should have done now?
What you have done now? It's tchilas b'pshia v'seifa b'ainis. Tchilas b'pshia v'seifa b'ainis. Tchilas b'pshia v'seifa b'ainis, and the zaken halachas yichayiv. It's a pshia. Avad is pshia. You don't have the taina b'ainis. So maybe tchilas b'pshia v'seifa b'ainis will be under halacha, but this is tchilas b'pshia v'seifa b'ainis, and it's not. He did it. I don't even know if he's neman to say that he lost himself.
It's not. It's that was the minimum amount of force required to stop.
That was the minimum?
Yeah, because he tried everything else. He told him 1,000 times, stop. The other thing,
I want to tell you, it's good to know also for Shalom Bayis. If you tell your wife 100 times to do something, she doesn't listen. The next step is not a rock. Yeah. But Al Kapanim, there's a far merchik in between. Yeah. He should have gone to sleep with a shoe. I mean it. He should have gone. I asked him. I said, you go to sleep with not even a sneaker. You could take my shoes to sleep. They have hard bottoms. But he tried with a jar of hot peppers. It was on someone else. Yeah, that guy stopped. Believe me. But in any event, Rabbi say, Ladaiti, Mechatesi what? I want to tell you something. Normally, when you throw a hard object at somebody, as long as it hurts, it'll get them to stop. That's normally the way. I have a method of chinuch. It's on camera. I hope ACS won't come down. But, when my kids are little, 2 and 3 years old, and they go near a stove, and everybody says, "Oh, get them away, get them away, get them away," I always say, you know what? Maybe let them once touch something really hot, because they'll never ever touch it again. They'll never ever. Now, I'm not going to let my kid chas v'shalom play with fire. But there are some things you have to let a child learn. And it's the same thing with people. You have to if it hurts, kids don't do it again. I don't believe in chinuch and patching is a greise shaylahaint. But if a kid runs into a street, Rachmana litzlan, immediately, without any word, you have to give him a patch. You know why? Because he has to know running into a street means getting hurt. That's what it means. You can't patch him out of anger. That's an Isser Gomer. It's Aveira Pashat. But the point is, when things hurt, people stop. That's the bottom line. You throw a shoe at him, he'll stop. You don't have to crack his skull. You don't have to throw a rock. A rock is an extreme. It's slightly extreme, unless the kid grew up in Eretz Yisrael. Yeah. But Namal, it's an extreme thing. Now, I will... I'm sorry?
What about the other tzad? He has an obligation to be my Seder.
Oh, so that's what I wanted to mention. There's a Kesef HaKodshim over here, and I think it's in Yomar Mekaymis as well. The Kesef HaKodshim was written by the Das Kedoshim. Kesef HaKodshim is in Sif Yud Gimel. He writes a very interesting thing, but again, this is only going to be Negea, you'll see in a moment. He says like this. He goes the other way. Let's say this guy was in the right. He reached over and he picked a rock off a shelf by mistake. He's half asleep. I call them bed cheshbainis, right? You hit your snooze button once, twice, and then it says 6:59 and Shachris is 7 o'clock, but it still says 6 on your clock, so you hit the snooze button again. What are you doing? You can't get this. You can't fly to Shachris. The kap arbit nish does when you're sleeping, right? So he reaches over and he pulls a rock off a shelf, and he doesn't realize. Right? So over there we're saying the halacha would be technically that you're pater. Kesef HaKodshim says a murder chiddush. He says he's going on the case of Kleinman subizuyim, but it would be the same halacha with Hakah. If it was Hakah midin techacha. Nira shein ze rak ayde Kleinman subizuyim sheinam nechayim lefi din teresein hakadosh v'yesh bohem isrei noas dvarim. Ma shein kein b'dvarim shehem l'shem shamayim. Oy shein behem signein isrei noas dvarim. Over there the halacha would be that you have no right to fight back. So if the boy was waking him up l'shem shamayim, then technically the one reacting would be chayiv, even if he reacted in a way which was measured, which was appropriate. Right? That's the halacha, l'chayra. And at the same time, I will say, I think that it really depends on the gedarim of halacha. I think it would be talui if halachically he has a rech to wake him up. So it means like this. L'gabe shachris tefillah b'tzibur, I think you have the right to wake him up. Although I will say over a maisa, last year, a veker sent a shayla through a mechanech to the yeshiva. There's a boy in the yeshiva where he vexed. He has a hard time waking up. And no matter what he does, he can't get this boy out of bed. So what he started doing is that at least he turns on the light. Turns on the light. And Nebuch, it's a boy, he's a troubled boy. He's a hard time getting out of bed. A lot of teenagers, very common. So one time, this boy asked the veker on his way out. He said, "Look, I'm not getting up for shachris anyway. Can you close the light?" So he asked his Rabbi, "What should he do?" Nebuch, the kid's not coming to shachris. They sent the shayla with me to Shmuel, and Shmuel said, "If you know for sure he's not coming to shachris, it means unfortunately there's a problem there. He has an issue. Train yourself to be a man. Shut the light." You always have to make a shekel. You always have to be making cheshbainis. Yeah, that's not for everybody also. But the point is, there's always a cheshbon that needs to be made. So when you're handling shachris, then he has to get up. Going to second seder, Rabbi says not for the Kallah. Like going to second seder, lav dafka. Yeah, do you have the right to say I'm waking you up l'shem shemayim? Yeah. I hope none of my young are listening. The guy's in camp, you know what I mean? He's in a matzav where it's now maybe if it'll affect the olam. In this case, it was from one of the smaller programs. That's what I mentioned at the outset. If it would have been good as masmidim, 250 boys, very shvach l'shem shemayim dekataina. You have a case where it's a place where there's 60 boys and 10 of them are missing. It's a riffian. It's a grace riffian. I'm still not convinced that it's l'shem shemayim, and I also believe that if you're doing it for fun, even if technically you could claim l'shem shemayim, but if you're doing it for fun, you don't have a heter of l'shem shemayim.
What about
Chavrusa, gotta find a new one. Yeah. And in any event, Rabbi say, in this case, I paskin that he was chayiv in the 975. The shaila of lab baldvarim didiyat, I think, is not a taina b'chlal. This is derech agav. I think lab baldvarim didiyat is not a taina because in chavala, there's a Rabbi Chanan in Kavit Shurim in Ksubas, he's machiach this, that mei chavala is not paying, I don't pay the bill, that's not the din. The din is I have to provide you with the ability to get better. And that's the din of Demei Ripoy. Rabbi Yankel Bloy in Pischei Choshen brings, let's say somebody has insurance. And his bills are going to be covered by insurance. Rabbi Yankel Bloy says, still the halachas you have to pay him. He has to speak now to his insurance company. He has to say, I made money off of it, I didn't need you to cover it. But al kapanim, Demei Ripoy goes straight to the nechbal. Negea cases where Yechovel be'evet, he brings rayas from cases of Rabbi Chanan, brings rayas where Yechovel be'evet. The shaila, you didn't need to get stitches. You could have had a smudge on your forehead. That's often a halach in Shulchan Aruch. Lani is daiti. There's a case in Shulchan Aruch of somebody who's chayvel ba'oiroi shel chaveiroi. You do something which causes somebody's skin color to change. Shulchan Aruch states that you have a chiyuv of ripoy. You have an obligation, it's the chiyuv of ripoy, to be merape him, to give him the ability to heal his skin. I think skin color changing is the same as leaving a scar. That will be mafriya, that will be nicker. So I think there's a chiyuv ripoy, it's a scar. So at least Rabbi said we got to the first two shilas. I'm sorry? I was mechayiv him to pay the 975. I told the boy who gets the 975 he has to give it to his parents. He shouldn't packet it. And al kapanim, these are these first two halachas, and the third one in Mitzvah Hashem we'll have to reserve it for a different time. Rabbi said I'd like to wish everybody a ksiva chasina taiva. It's a kiddush Hashem to come out and learn, even on a Labor Day. It's a kiddush Hashem even on a day's vacation. Tchilas dinay shal adam is a sakta b'Torah. Maybe shall help in the schus haTorah zal beistein a ksiva chasina taiva.